It says Anderson Powerpoles.
Yep.
Today's date, RJ, KC4LRR. I'm
Yep.
good on QRZ if anybody wants to get a hold of me. Anderson Powerpoles were invented by Anderson Power Products in 1964 for, let me move this thing that shows everybody because it's over my slide. Let's see, can I reduce that? Hide thumbnail video. Yeah, that's it. For the Bay Area Rapid Transit in San Francisco, California, some project they were doing for the transit company out there. PowerPole families of connectors are Anderson Powerpole's second principal product line. I did a presentation on PowerPoles a few years ago, and since then, AndersonPower.com has really done a nice About Us timeline. It's very interesting if you want to go take a look at AndersonPower.com. Well, hello.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Just click a mouse and it goes. Power poles, they're cute little things. They're a genderless design, self-cleaning, silver-plated contacts, color-coded housings, molded dovetails where you can put them together, and available in lots of colors. In the amateur radio world, we use mainly 15, 30, and 45 amp power poles. All three use the same plastic cases. 10 gauge wire requires a 45 amp connector. 12 to 16 gauge 30 amp connector, and 18 gauge or smaller uses a 15 amp connector. This is a picture of a 15, a 30, and a 45, different colored power pole cases stuck together in a variety of ways, and a little tool for pushing 15 gauge connectors into the plastic housings and for removing connectors from housings. Some equipment now comes with power pole connections from the factory. The MFJ power supply I have for my camper and on my laboratory desk. Tentec Eagle, the L-Craft KXPA 100 AT for the KX3 and KX2. Hardened Power Systems down in Pulaski makes this things they call backpacks, that little guys that go on your portable batteries, one fused outlet, one unfused outlet, and a little switch that'll tell you what kind of voltage you got. So since I have one of those on my portable ops battery, I put power poles on my solar charger. Power Gates, MFJ Super Battery Booster. The new version now has power poles in addition to the 5-way binding post. West Mountain Radio and MFJ both make rig runners. So if you got a power supply that takes one single wire, you can come out of it and plug into one of these and feed 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 radios, depending on what size of a rig runner you buy. These are 40 watt max, 40 amp max. Well, I need to change that. 4 connectors and USB 5.1 volt charging capabilities. I also have one of these in my truck. Comes straight from the battery into this and feed, my HF Mobile, VHF, and the Ameritron controller from a Tar Heel. PowerWorks makes this little 10 amp, 12 volt cigarette lighter adapter. They're great if you need one for, I wouldn't use it permanently, but I've run it for 6 months in my truck before I finally hardwired to the battery. Crimper solder, it depends on your crimping and your soldering skills. I soldered about my first 3 pair and then bought the crimper. I can solder, but still it was just, let's get the crimper so you can do it out in the field if you need to. This is what the crimper looks like. It's got special dies for the 15, 30, and 45 amp connectors. Do not try to use the normal crimper for insulated and uninsulated ring and spade terminals, because you'll waste your connectors and get very frustrated. I had somebody call me one time just raising all kinds of cane about why they couldn't get their connectors into the plastic housings, and it's because you weren't using the right crimper. Small gauge wire in a 15 amp connector tends to break easy. So what I do is I fold the wire back over the insulation and crimp it into into the 15 amp. And if needed, you can use a 30 amp connector, but It sure keeps the wire from breaking. The crimp, if you use the right crimper, it will crimp around the wire. And then on the right photo with the arrows, it also crimps across to keep it from pulling out. So it's a very secure connection using the power pole crimper. Few things you got to remember when you're building the power pole is put them together with red on right, tongue on top. When you crimp the wires, crimp red on right with the hook down. And when you insert the wires into the cases, you will get red on right, tongue on top again. It's a little fuzzy. Sorry about that. But you can see the little hook on the connector. It goes around and over the blade inside the connector. Sometimes things don't go as planned. 45 amp power poles are the hardest ones to crimp because it has a open U-shaped connector. And I have found out that it's easier if you put the connector in the crimper, as in the picture on the right, and then insert your wire and crimp that way. Because you got to get it at the right angle in the crimper, or you're going to end up with what's on the left picture. There's a lot of retail and 3D printable chassis mounts and covers and things available for power poles. Just look on Thingiverse or Tinkercad or whichever 3D printing software you prefer to use. I also put green connectors on the ground wires in my shack. That way, if I need to move a piece of equipment, I don't have to try to find a wire nut or a screw or a nut on the back of the radio. I can just unplug the ground wire and go. You get creative. When we built our BidX 40s a few years ago, there was an option to put more power to the PA circuit and get more power out. So we used the red and black for the 12 volt and came up with gray and blue that I had purchased for making a linked dipole, and turned them sideways for the 15 to 25 volt connection. And that way you couldn't accidentally plug the 15 and 25 volt into the one for the 12 volt and let all the smoke out of your BidX 40. I think Dave Matthews and I both did this on ours. I don't know if anybody else that built the BidXs did that. I have a variety of jumpers I keep in my truck. The one in the top right of the picture is now connected straight to the battery in the Tundra. And then I got a jumper going from it to inside the truck, but just a variety of things. I'm now using non-metallic banana plugs. These are for audio, and it was all I had at the time, so they have been replaced. But just a variety of things. 20 amp fuses. You can, I think, go 30 amp in those. Cigarette lighter adapter, one for your typical T connector for FM mobile radios. A lot of Tentec rigs have 12 volt out with an RCA jack, so I got that one where I can run a diamond meter off of my Tentec if I need to, and just a variety of things. Get creative. My Lionel Christmas train accessories, the little Santa workshop and the LEDs on the house back behind the train are all wired with power poles. Makes it easy to connect them and disconnect them. I got this box full of stuff I carry when we have meetings that aren't virtual. And I have power poles and crimpers and mounts and banana plugs, ring connectors, spade connectors, RJ45. So I can make different kinds of power pole cables as needed. I think Gene has an order in for a 4-foot one that I was going to make, but it snowed and I haven't gotten out. So I'll make that soon and get one to Gene. When I first started doing power poles was many years ago when I first joined WCARES, and the first event I participated in was the Harpeth River Ride. And they said, bring your radio. And somebody said something about power poles, and I had no idea what a power pole was. So Gary Hayden gave me a cable that would work with the battery they had to run my radio. And after that, I started looking for power poles. Nobody around here had them, so I started buying them 100 at a time, and selling them a dollar a pair. And everybody kept asking for power poles with different connectors on the other end. So I just got this tackle box and started throwing pieces and parts in it. And soon it grew to have RF connectors, PL259s for RG8X and RG8, and just a variety of stuff. That's what's in RJ's tackle box. If we ever get to where we can have non-virtual meetings again. Any questions?
Jay, do you know the difference between your West Mountain crimper and a Quicksilver version of the crimper?
No. I have the Quicksilver crimper for coax, but I had already bought the West Mountain radio when I did. I don't know if the dies are interchangeable, but if I started to buy the dies for the coax one just to have an extra set and haven't done it yet, but I don't know if there's any major difference in them.
Have you found anything that you would not use power poles on?
No, I actually built as long as you stay within the amperage rating of the connector, you should be all right. I actually built a 17-meter portable vertical, and I use power poles to connect the coax to the base of the antenna. So that might be kind of pushing it.
RJ?
Yeah.
Rig Runner now makes a little panel that has both a solar controller and a battery charge controller for both conventional batteries and lithium iron phosphate batteries. And you can hook a solar panel up to it, put your backup battery for your emergency service at home, and it'll keep it charged continuously for you.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty good deal because, my solar is 28 watt, and I think it's probably good for my small portable ops battery. I also have an old lawnmower battery down in the garage that I take out portable, but I usually just charge it with an AC battery charger.
Yeah, RJ, could you talk a little bit about ensuring snugness and making sure that the power pole connectors don't pull out inadvertently?
Some companies make a little connector that plugs into both of them, because there's a hole in each set of power poles where they won't come apart. Or you can use a real small wire tie, or there's a certain gauge of weed eater line. It's smaller than 0.095. It's smaller than that. But you can cut it and just stick it in there, and they won't pull out. That's the main problem with power poles, is they're easy to disconnect. But if you want if you need it where it won't easily disconnect. I noticed that picture I took of the one in my truck. The one in the truck is starting to come out.
Have you ever done anything with filling in the gap where the wire is going in, like a little silicone or something?
No, I haven't done that. I guess you could if you wanted to waterproof it. I check the one in my truck occasionally because it's that wire coming off the battery has the fuses in it, and it's about 8 inches long, and I got another set of power poles plugged onto it so I can disconnect it, but I don't see any corrosion or anything.
I've got one installed on the back of my truck. I've got a relay power source for some reverse lights on some of my trailers, and I use power pole on it. So I've got one that they're in the outside constantly. They've never corroded over the years, never been a problem.
Okay, did you put silicone in them, or are they just bare?
They're just bare. No,
Okay,
not a problem.
I haven't had a problem, and they're self-cleaning. So if you pull it apart and plug it back in a couple of times, you're going to clean the connection. But I really haven't had a problem with them, and I've been using them ever since whatever year I got in on the W cares and started messing with them. But
and of course, I think you mentioned PowerWorks, but there is a whole variety of connectors there. A setup I had in my past car, I needed to bring power from the battery at the front all the way to the trunk of the car, and I was concerned about voltage drop, so I had a like something similar to a rig runner that had the next size up beyond the 45 amp, where I could run I think eight gauge wire back there, and then it offered like 5 of the 45, 30, or 15, 30, and 45 amp connectors on it. So there's lots of accessories and varieties out there. Anything you can think of, it can be built or it's there.
Yeah, if you go to Quicksilver or Powerworks.com, I mean they got 75 amp, 150 amp, I think up to like 500 amp power poles. So and Anderson Power has all different kinds of connections, and that's their business. So they if you need high power, they definitely have them.
Hey, RJ,
Yes, sir.
if someone asks you to give them a hand because I lost power to their equipment and they have power poles, I've had several people come over, and probably 90% of the time when they put the connector into the housing, they don't get that click. And so what happens, you put another one together and it pushes the one out. So that's where you're losing your power. So if you ever get to looking for loss of power, make sure that the power poles are fully engaged in the tip.
Yeah, you got to make sure that little hook on the connector goes over that blade that's in the plastic housing. If not, it's not going to stay together good.
Right.
But that's where that little tool comes in. I used to use a little screwdriver, but I stabbed my finger one time, so I went to the little tool. It was worth the $6 investment to keep from stabbing myself.
Are there generic non-Anderson brand connectors out there? Do you know anything about them?
I do.
Yes, there is. If you go into the RC modeling world, like RC cars and planes, there is an exact duplicate of this. It's known as Sermos, S-E-R-M-O-S, Sermos connectors. And it's been part of that Anderson Powerpole. And so if you're out somewhere and you're in need of something, if you can find a hobby shop that carries RC stuff, you'll probably find like I said, what's known as Sermos connectors, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're a new operator and you get a radio and want power poles on it, don't go buy a bunch of stuff. Just call me, and I'm not making any money off of making cables. I'm just just decided to keep inventory and have them if people need them, and for $1 or $2, you can get power poles put on your radio instead of spending money on a crimper and all that. So. It was just, after everybody wanting them, after I bought that first 100, I just decided to start keeping them. And that way, I guess now that everybody's got Amazon Prime, you can order a $5 part and not pay shipping. That's the only thing you get a month. And then you're paying $14.99 for the shipping. But, it was just a way to have them. And you didn't have to spend $10 on a part and $12 on shipping.
All right. Great presentation, RJ. Thank you.
All right. That's the end. Fancy Rose, Calico Cat was not harmed while making this presentation.
There you go.
Let's see. Stop sharing. Boom. All right. Cool.
All right. And I don't know where we'd be without power poles. When we set up my new 4Runner a couple of years ago, we ran a 60 amp circuit to a rig runner in the back, and everything runs off of that. And
well, yeah, that's basically what I did in my Tundra. I ran a 10 gauge wire back and 5 amp connectors to a 40 amp rig runner. Did the same thing, run everything off it. I got one extra outlet. I got a Cobra 11 meter all in the microphone CB that I use when I'm out 4-wheeling with friends that don't have their ham license. Yeah.
Yeah. I ran number 6 wire all the way to the back, and I don't have a bit of voltage problems.
Yeah. And I got somebody turned me on to some number 6 wire. So if anybody needs a few feet of number 6 zip cord, let me know.
Yeah. Anybody got any other questions for RJ?
Yeah. MFJ's power distribution, I forgot the exact model I got upstairs, claims to have 8 gauge for that main cable. Does it actually require the 75, or will it actually fit into the 45 amp connector?
The most I've ever done in the 45 is 10 gauge. So I don't know if you'd need a larger one or not, but for 45 amp, 10 gauge seems to do good. Another thing, when we built I used to work at Metro Health Department, and when we built the Go kits up there, we bought the 10 or 12 outlet rig runners, and we just went into the circuit board and cut a big gap in the circuit board and made 2 5s out of it, or 2 6s, whatever it was. So, that's another thing you can do, because we had 2 power supplies just for backup and did that. But you can modify them. They say the MFJ ones you really need to take apart occasionally, take the cover off and make sure the connections aren't getting loose. And I've had 0 problems out of the 3 West Mountain radio brand I got. I'm not pushing West Mountain radio, but I've had 0 problems out of them.
Another thing you can do, RJ.
From China.
Go ahead, Jack.
Oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I'd
Go
be
ahead,
very
Jack.
careful if you buy someone which comes from China. You had a good price on them, but at one of our regular meetings when we used to get together, a gentleman had come over and he had the Chinese version, and the metal connector was just very limited. It did not have a good solid contact like you get from the Anderson. So just be aware of it if you get something other than from Anderson or one of the reputable dealers.
Yeah, I buy mine from West Mountain, and I usually get my zip cord from PowerWorks. They're a little cheaper on it. It just kind of depends on, how big an order I want to place and what I need.
One other thing, RJ, is if you're running big wire from the front of a vehicle to the back or in your shack, and it's too big for your connectors, there's no problem with splicing on a smaller piece for the last 6 inches. You're not going to affect your voltage drop at all, but you gain the benefit of the voltage drop on the big wire, but you can lower it the last little bit, to put into a power pole that needs a 30 amp connector or something.
Yeah, I think I did that one time when I needed a 45 amp connector and didn't have them. So I cut a couple of wires off of the 10 gauge and just got it to where it would fit in the 30.
That works too.
Yeah.
That works too. But I mean, we would use it on power systems where you might need to run a heavy, like 480 or 600 volt feeder for several hundred feet, like more than 500 feet. And you would run like parallel circuits of 500 MCM, that's the size of your thumb, to get the voltage drop to a minimum. But then you could reduce that with an inline connector down to like number 6 on each end.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know.
Okay.
10's big enough for the hook it to your large battery backup for a house station.
I'm running 10 gauge for my battery off of my power gate. So 10 gauge is working for it.
Okay.